Hi, if you're watching this video, it's because we have started a Cell City Analogies project, and we're currently in Chapter 7, Section 3. This is a huge part of what you're learning this year, the different organelles and their functions, and also how they work together to help the cell maintain certain functions, one of them homeostasis. So this is about a week-long class project. It is worth either a lab grade or a test grade to be determined at the time, and some of our top students will go on to teach fifth graders at the elementary school. So I'm going to take you through segment by segment and show you what you have. First of all, you have this packet. And the packet it takes 3 million cells to cover the head of a pin, but only one cell city to cover a large part of your biology second quarter grade. This project will count as a lab grade. It is therefore going to be a major part of your grade for quarter 2. As always, you should do your very best work. You will be presenting your cities to others in a small group during class on the day the projects are due. Some of you will go to the elementary and teach fifth graders about cells using your project. Here you'll write down the due date, and that should be listed for you either on the board, in class, in an email, and most definitely Google Classroom. There's 4 parts to the project. The first part that you will be graded on is your daily participation and your presentation points. The second part, cell parts, definitions, and function worksheet. That's all one thing, and I'll go over that in a minute. It's graded for accuracy and completeness. So here we have cell part, structure, and function, what I just told you about, and your instructions are to use your textbook to determine the structure and function of each of the following cell parts. You're to write a brief description of the structure and its function of each of the cell parts in the space provided below. It doesn't matter if you're going to do an animal or a plant cell. You have to complete all of these organelles and plant parts and animal parts. So the first thing you're going to do on this sheet is to decide the structure that we're discussing, if it's an animal, a plant, or if it's found in both animal and plant cells, and to write down either animal, plant, or both. The next line, it's all about the structure. Where is it located? Why is it there? What does it look like? Okay, so for cytoplasm, the environment inside the plasma membrane is a semi-fluid material. That's its structure. Its function is it helps break down sugar to generate the energy used for other functions inside the cell. Now, some of these, like cell wall, will have more than one thing. I think cell wall has 4 different functions that it provides. So in your book on page 199, there's a table. And the table is a great reference to see really quickly, hey, is it animal, plant, or both? But I would really caution you against using that table for this. And here's why. If they write an entire paragraph on the cell wall on page 198, then there's probably a paragraph of information that you're going to need. And don't forget, part of your grade is going to be for completeness. So it might be accurate if you say the cell wall is made up of rigid fibers, but is it complete if you don't tell me those fibers are a carbohydrate called cellulose? Okay, so don't get into that trap. The third thing that you're going to be graded on is your Cell City Analogy worksheet. It's the sentences you write down. You're going to be graded for completeness, accuracy, creativity, and originality. And this is where your personality can really come through. Inside your packet, you will find the Cell City Analogy worksheet. According to Webster's Dictionary, an analogy is a comparison between 2 things which are similar in some respects, but otherwise different. An explanation of something by comparing it point by point with something else. So your instructions are to fill in the spaces below for each cell part in order to create a 1-sentence analogy that shows the similarity between the cell part and the object you selected to represent the cell part in your collage. That's really wordy, but just follow along with me. This is so important. Highlight, be sure to explain the reasoning. If you don't, it's wrong. Even if you're right, you have to explain the reasoning behind your analogy. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look at this example analogy. The nucleus is like a brain, so I'm comparing the nucleus to a brain because the brain, like the nucleus, controls and coordinates the activities of the whole cell. In the same way, the brain controls and coordinates the activities of the body. This would be an example sentence of an analogy for one of the organelles, in this case, a nucleus. So you're going to be writing a sentence for each one of the organelles that will be found inside of your cell. So if you're talking about a plant cell, you'll want to make an analogy about a cell wall. But if you're talking about an animal cell, you don't have a cell wall. So in that case, you would not need to write it down. So before we go any farther, this sheet, you have to have every single organelle completed. You're learning about all the organelles, regardless what type of cell you want to do. But when it comes to the analogy worksheet and you're writing out the sentences, you're only writing out sentences that go with the actual cell that you have chosen. Here's a helpful way to write up your analogy, and this will be attached to the back of your Cell City drawing. The numbers will coordinate with the numbers of the objects on your drawing, and I'll show you an example of that here in a minute. If the nucleus is number 1, then 1 should be the nucleus on the front of your page. So you need to ask yourself before you start writing your analogy, what is your direction and why did you choose to go that way? I would suggest using lined notebook paper to write out your full analogies and make sure the number of analogies are in order you want to explain them to the class. Remember, you're going to be teaching 5th graders or even younger about cells, 2 different kinds of cells, plants and animal, and that each of those cells have different functions and different organelles inside of them to help make them work. So you're going to be talking on their level, so make sure it's something that they can understand. For example, if you're doing an actual city, what does a mailman do? Most kids know that. A mailman delivers and picks up information and delivers it to other places. Okay? They know what a factory does. It makes things, it builds things. So think along those lines. So here we have an example of a plant cell, and the students chose to make a middle school. And it's a little fuzzy, and I know you can't see, but I just wanted to show you a couple of different examples before moving on. So in this rendition, a student did Maze Runner. And of course, if you've seen the movie Maze Runner or read the book, you know that Wicked is good, and Wicked controls everything about the maze. Okay, so in this case, Wicked would be represented for the nucleus. Okay, just another really cool idea. Notice everything is really easy to see. Here we have animal cells. It was a band, and we'll be taking a close-up at that in just a little bit. And then among dozens that I have to say this was probably the most interesting and pretty cool. So this was the journey of a body system. So students were learning about a body system and how that worked, on top of having this body represent, and its different systems, represent a cell. There's a lot of different options that you can choose as far as themes to represent your cell and your Cell City project. My suggestion to you is find something that you know a lot about, something that really interests you. So for me, I love Harry Potter and the wizarding world of Harry Potter. That's probably what I would base mine on. If you're really into makeup and you like to do those types of videos, either watch them or make the tutorial videos for makeup, why don't you make a tutorial makeup video or a makeup factory for your Cell City? What if you love cars? An entire car system could represent a cell system easily. So there's so many different options. Don't be afraid to try one. So taped to the back of the skits that I just showed you, or the sketches, is the cell analogy sentences. And of course, these have evolved and we're more at a high school level now. But you can see number 1, the student wrote, "We chose the security guard for cell membrane because he guards what gets in and out of the concert. Cell membrane protects the cell and regulates what substance enter and leave the cell." Number 2, We chose the speaker for the Golgi body because it sends sounds to the crowd. The Golgi body receives materials from the endoplasmic reticulum and sends them to other parts of the cell, and they also release materials outside the cell. So this one was a little tricky. They started off good, but their analogies didn't altogether quite make sense. So when thinking of your theme, you have to ask yourself, what is Mrs. Lewis going to ask me when I'm standing up there to explain why I felt that analogy worked? And if you can't explain it, you might want to pick something else. For the body systems, number 2, we chose the mouth as our cell membrane because they control what leaves and enters the cell body. Okay, pretty cool. So on your analogy worksheet, when you were writing out your sentences, I said make sure your numbers correspond. So you'll notice for the mouth, they have the number 2. And on the back of this sheet, you just saw the number 2. Those should match. Something else, I should see mouth, not cell membrane on the front. Just like here. They pointed out this is a brain, okay? I don't need to know that's the nucleus because you're already telling me that's a nucleus. Tell me what this represents, because quite frankly, we all know what a brain looks like, but not everybody understands the movie It. Not everybody understands Harry Potter. Believe me, there are some people who have still not watched the movie or read a book. And not everybody knows what the Maze Runner is, and not everyone is a football fan if you chose to do a football stadium. So you have to explain the picture to us, and then verbally, you can explain how that corresponds with the cell. So one of the things that I liked about this is this group of ladies, Brooke, Ramona, and Madison, they actually picked their parts. They knew before they got up in front of the class who was going to say what, and they also took ownership of that. So this is their key. It is obviously pasted onto the back of their drawing, and they said the school wall protects everything inside of it, like the cell wall in a plant. And the cell wall surrounds the membrane. Okay, I kind of like how they did that. It's also nice how they highlighted different words. Do you have to do that? No. But when you're presenting in front of people and sometimes nerves take over, the highlighting will help keep you on target. So these are just a few tips. My last tip of the day is this right here. Even though in the directions it says you're going to tape this to the back of your drawing, people still will write on the back of their paper. If you write on the back of your paper, you're going to have to be flipping it back and forth all the time, which can make it really kind of weird and odd when you're up there. So I would caution you on that. If you have any other questions, email me. A few of your organelles cannot be found in your book. If that's the case, feel free to hop on the internet and Google it.